Hello everyone, welcome to this video presentation. So in this video presentation, I'll be covering module number 5, that is RTOS and IDE for embedded system design. RTOS is nothing but the real-time operating system and IDE is nothing but the integrated development environment here. So RTOS, real-time operating system, which implies deterministic in timing behavior, and IDE, that is integrated development environment, is a software application that provides facilities to computer programmer for software development here. Now we'll see what all the things we'll be covering in this module. So first we'll deal with the operating system basics. So here we'll see the type of operating system, task, process and threads, then multiprocessing and multitasking, then task communication, task synchronization, issues raising and deadlock, and concept of binary and counting semaphores. Then we'll see how to choose an real-time operating system, and under this we'll see integration and testing of embedded hardware and firmware, and lastly we'll see the embedded system development environment. So there we'll see the block diagram, disassembler, decompiler, then simulator, emulator and debugging techniques, then a target hardware, debugging and boundary scanning here. Now we'll see in detail about these contents. So first we'll deal with the operating system. So first we need to understand what is operating system. So usually the operating system will act as a bridge between the user application and the underlying system resources through a set of system functionalities and services here. For example, Android, Windows, Linux are example for the operating systems. Right now you may be using the Android phones, so which Android will act as a operating system, right? So this operating system will act as a bridge between the user applications. So user applications like WhatsApp, Facebook, right? So it will act as a bridge between the user application and the underlying system resources here through a set of system functionalities and services here. So the primary functions of operating systems are make the system convenient to use, then organize and manage the system resources efficiently and correctly here. Now going to the basic components of operating system. Okay, so this figure gives the insight into the basic components of operating system and their interfaces with the rest of the world here. So in this figure we can see the user applications, okay, and the kernel services and underlying hardware here. So kernel is an art of the operating system. So this kernel, which gives the services like memory management, process management, time management, file system management, then input output system management here. So this kernel services, which is the heart of the operating system, will act as a bridge between the user applications and underlying hardware here. If suppose user applications want to communicate with the kernel services or the operating system, it requires the application program interfaces here. Now operating system wants to communicate with the underlying hardware, then it requires the device driver interfaces here. Okay, so this figure gives the basic components of the operating system here. So the basic components are the kernel services, memory management, process management, time management, file system management, then input output system management here. Now going to the kernel, we'll understand what is this kernel. So mainly the kernel is the heart of the operating system. So it is responsible for managing the system resources and communication among the hardware and the other system services here. So the kernel is the core of the operating system. So kernel will act as an abstraction layer between the system resources and the user applications, and kernel contain a set of system libraries and services. So for general purpose operating system, the kernel contains different services like memory management, process management, time management, file system management, then input output system management here. Now going to the kernel space and user space, we'll see what is this kernel space and user space. So usually the program code corresponding to the kernel applications or services are kept in an area of primary memory, and it is protected from the unauthorized access by user programs or applications here. So this program code corresponding to the kernel application or services need to be protected here. So what is meant by kernel space? The memory space at which the kernel code is located is known as the kernel space here, and the partitioning of memory into the kernel space. So most of the operating system keep in the kernel application code in main memory, and it is not swapped out into the secondary memory here. So they are all kept into the main memory or primary memory here. User space, all user applications, okay, so your WhatsApp or Facebooks, which are loaded to a specific area of primary memory, and this memory area is referred as what? The user space here. And user space is purely operating system dependent here. Now going to the different type of kernel. So that is a monolithic kernel and micro kernel here. So kernel forms the heart of the operating system, as we know that, and different approaches are adopted for the building an operating system kernels. So based on kernel design, the kernels can be classified into two types. One is monolithic and micro. So monolithic kernel, so in this architecture, all kernel services run in the kernel space only. All kernel modules run within the same memory space under a single kernel thread here. And the major drawback of monolithic kernel is that any error or failure in any one of the kernel modules leads to the crashing of the entire kernel applications here. For example, Linux, Solaris, and MS-DOS kernels here. Then coming to the micro kernel. So the microkernel design incorporates only essential set of operating system services into the kernel, and the rest of the operating system services are implemented in program known as servers, so which runs in user space. The memory management, timer systems, and interrupt handlers are the essential services which forms the part of the microkernel here. So the benefits of microkernel are based on designs are robustness and configurability. So these are the benefits of microkernel here. Robustness: if a problem is encountered in any of the services which runs as a server, can be reconfigured and restarted without restarting the entire OS here. So here the chances of corruption of kernel services are ideally zero here. So this makes the robustness of the microkernel here. Then configurability: any services which runs as a server applications can be changed without the need to restart the whole system here. So this makes the system dynamically configurable here. Now going to the process management. So this process management deals with the managing the process or task here. So it mainly deals with the scheduling and managing the execution of the process, setting up and managing process control blocks, and inter-process communication and synchronization. Then deals with the allocating system resources, and deals with the loading process code into the memory and setting up the memory for the processor here. So these all the task which is processed by the process management here. Now going to the memory management. So this management, that is memory management, so which mainly refers to the volatile memory, that is random access memory, where processes are loaded and variables and shared data are stored. So the memory management unit, that is MMU of the kernel, is responsible for keeping a track of which part of the memory area is currently used by the which process here, and allocating and deallocating memory space on a need basis here. So this is all the memory management. Then coming to the file system management, usually a file is a collection of related information. A file could be program or source code or executable program, or the file can be the text file, image file, word documents, or audio video files, etc. So a file system management services of kernel is responsible for the creation, deletion and alteration of files, then creation, deletion and alteration of directories, saving of files in the secondary storage memory, providing automatic allocation of file space and flexible naming conversion of for the files here. Now coming to the input output system management, the kernel is responsible for routing the input output request coming from a different user application to appropriate input output devices of the systems here. So the IO system, in this the kernel maintains a list of IO devices of the system. So it maintains the list of input output devices which are connected to the system, and the device manager of the kernel is responsible for handling all the input output related operations. And the device management is responsible for loading and unloading of device drivers and exchanging information and the system specific control signals to and from the devices here. Now going to the secondary storage memory. So it deals with the managing the secondary storage memory devices connected to the system, if any, and it used as a backup medium for programs and data, as the main memory is volatile, and secondary storage is kept in a disk or hard disk, and disk storage allocation, disk scheduling, free disk space management, managing the secondary storage. So this secondary storage management deals with these tasks. Now going to the next part, that is the type of operating systems. So depending on the type of kernel and kernel services and purpose and type of computing system, operating systems can classified into two different types. One is the real-time operating system and another one is the general purpose operating system here. So real-time operating system, so which implies deterministic in timing behavior, and RTOS services consumes only known and expected amounts of time regardless of the number of services here. And real-time operating system implements policies and rules concerning time critical and allocation of system resources here. And real-time operating system decides which applications should run in which order and how much time needs to be allocated for each application here. For example, Windows Embedded Compact, QNX, VxWorks, Micro C, OS2, etc. are example for real-time operating systems here. Then coming to the general purpose operating systems. So the operating system which are deployed in general computing systems are referred as general purpose operating system, and the general purpose operating systems are often quite non-deterministic in behavior. So for example, Windows 10, 8, XP, MS-DOS, etc. are example of general purpose operating systems here. Now going to the real-time operating system, so referred as a real-time kernel. So the kernel of a real-time operating system is referred as a real-time kernel. So the real-time kernel is highly specialized and it contains only the minimal set of services required for running user applications or tasks. So the basic functions of real-time kernel are listed here. So first one, the task or process memory management, task process scheduling, task process synchronization, error exception handling, memory and time management, and interrupt handling. So these are the basic functions of real-time kernel here. Now coming to the task process management, so it mainly deals with the setting up the memory space for the task, loading the task code into the memory space, allocating system resources, and setting up a task control block, that is TCB, for the task and the task process termination or deletion here. So a TCB, that is a task control block, is used for holding the information corresponding to a task here. And implementation of a TCB is kernel dependent. The parameters and implementation of the TCB is kernel dependent. So the task control block parameters vary across different kernels based on the task management implementation here. So TCB usually contains the following set of information: the task ID, the task state, the task type, the task priority, the task context pointer, the task memory pointers, the task system resources pointers, task pointers, and other parameters here. Now we'll see in detail about the TCB, which contains a set of information like the task ID. Okay, so task ID that contains a task identification number, task state, so the current state of the task, example the state, if the state of the system is ready, so it is for ready for a task which is ready to execute here. Then task type, so this specifies the type of the task, so the task can be hard real time or soft real time or background task here. Then task priority, so for example, if the task priority is set to 1 for task with the priority is equal to 1 here. Then the task context pointer, so the context pointer for context saving, and the task memory pointer pointers to the code memory, data memory, and stack memory for the task, and the task system resources pointers, so pointers to the system resources like semaphores, mutex used by the task here, and task pointers pointers to the other TCBs for presiding, next, and waiting task here. Now going to the task or process scheduling and synchronization. Scheduling, which deals with the sharing the CPU among various tasks or process. A kernel application called scheduler, which handles the task scheduling, and the scheduler is an algorithm implementation which performs the efficient and optimal scheduling of tasks to provide a deterministic behavior. Whereas synchronization, which deals with the synchronizing the concurrent access of a resource which is shared across multiple tasks and the communication between various tasks here. Now going to the error exception and handling, which deals with the registering and handling the errors occurred during the execution of the task. For example, insufficient memory, timeouts, bus error, divide by zero, deadlocks, deadline missing, and unknown instruction execution are examples of error or exceptions here. Now error exception can happen at kernel level, service, or at the task level here. So the operating system kernel gives the information about the error in the form of a system calls that is called API here. So deadlock is an example for kernel level exception, and a timeout is an example for task level exception here. A deadlock is a situation where a set of processes are blocked because each process is holding our source and waiting for another resource acquired by some other process here. Whereas a timeouts and a retry, the task retries an event or a message certain number of times. If there is no response is received after exhausting the limit, the future might be aborted here. Now memory management. The memory management function of a real-time operating system kernel is slightly different compared to the general purpose operating system. So in general, the memory allocation time increases depending on the size of the block of memory needed to be allocated and the state of the allocated memory blocks here. Real-time operating system achieves predictable timing and deterministic behavior by compromising the effectiveness of memory location here. And real-time operating system generally uses block. So RTOS kernel uses blocks of a fixed size of a dynamic memory, and the block is allocated for a task on a need basis here. The blocks are stored in a free buffer queue here. RTOS kernels allow tasks to access any of the memory blocks without any memory protection to achieve predictable timing and avoid timing overheads here. The memory management function, a block of a fixed memory is always allocated for task on a need basis and it is taken as a unit. Hence, there will not be any memory fragmentation issues here. Now, interrupt handling, which deals with the handling of various interrupts. An interrupt informs the process that an external device or an associated task requires immediate attention of the CPU. There are two types. One is a synchronization interrupt and another is the asynchronous interrupts here. Asynchronous interrupt which occurs in a synchronization with the currently executing task is known as a synchronous interrupts here. For example, divide by zero, memory segmentation error, etc. are example of synchronous interrupts here. For synchronous interrupts, the interrupt handler runs in the same context of the interrupting task here. Whereas asynchronous interrupts are the interrupts which occurs at any time of the execution of the any task and are not in a synchronization with the currently executing task are asynchronous interrupts here. For example, timer overflow interrupts, serial data reception or transmission interrupts, etc. are example for asynchronous interrupts here. The interrupt handler is usually written as a separate task which depends on operating system kernel implementation and it runs in a different context. Hence, a context switch happens while handling the asynchronous interrupts here. Now going to the time management. It deals with the accurate time management and it is essential for providing precise time reference for all applications here. And the time reference to kernel is provided by a high resolution real-time clock hardware chip here. And the hardware timer is programmed to interrupt the process or controller at a fixed rate here. So this timer interrupt is referred as a timer tick. The timer tick is taken as the timing reference by the kernel here. So the timer tick interval may vary depending on the hardware timer and the time parameters for the task are expressed as the multiple of the timer tick here. So timer tick usually varies in a microsecond range here and the system time is updated based on the timer tick here. So the timer tick, if the system time register is a 32-bit weight and the timer tick interval is 1 microsecond, the system time register will reset in 2 raised to 32 into 10 raised to minus 6 divided by 24 into 60 into 60, that is equal to 0.0497 days, that is exactly 1.19 hours here. So here I am taking a 2 raised to 32 because it is a 32-bit width and 10 raised to minus 6 because it is the time interval is 1 microsecond, 24 hours, 60 minutes and 60 seconds, that is equal to 1.19 hours here. Same as if the timer ticker interval is 1 millisecond, the system time register will reset in 50 days here, approximately 50 days. So the timer tick interrupt is handled by the timer interrupt handler of the kernel here. The timer tick interrupts can be utilized for implementation in the following action. And the first one, to save the current context of the currently executing task, to increment the system time register by 1 and generating a timing error and reset the system time register if the timer tick count is greater than the maximum range available for system time register. And the next action, that is update the timer's implementation in kernel
increment registers with count direction setting equal to count up, and decrement register with count direction setting to count down, and activate the periodic task which are in ideal state. Invoke the scheduler and schedule the task again based on the scheduling algorithm, and the load the context for the first task in the ready queue. Due to the rescheduling, the ready task might be changed to a new one from the task which was preempted by the timer interrupt task here. So this was the utilization for implementing the following action of the timer tick here. So thank you for watching this video.